Welcome back to another Boom Bust Editorial. I'm your host, Terry, and today I'm talking about Madden and my suggestions to improve the franchise mode. So if you're a fan of Madden, you know that for a handful of years, Madden has been very disappointing to a lot of people. A lot of people prefer older classics and older generation games, and understandable, they're classic games, but even though there's Madden tournaments and all these different things, people continue to buy the game, we still haven't been satisfied. And so with Madden 20, there seems to be some excitement. I think the motion engine looks a lot more realistic and better. There's some different tweaks they've done. But overall, the reviews are franchise mode is still lacking. And they prefer to put more energy into gameplay, into Madden teams, which I understand. Gameplay, Madden teams I don't play, but I know it's popular. So franchise mode, though, is big for some people. For me, I know it's huge. That's one of the reasons I get the game. I usually do 3 franchises. I do a Bears franchise, a different team, and then I also do a fantasy draft one. So for me, franchise mode is a big thing, and it used to be really great, and I think it's lacking. So what will I change? First off, I'll say the new scenario engine that they've introduced potentially could solve some of those things that I want to see. And so we'll see. Right now, we heard it's lacking, but the idea is that they'll update it throughout the year with different packages and add new scenarios. So we'll see how good that turns out, but I think that's the right step. Number one, what I would want to see change is with the coaching and the staff. At the minimum, because there's levels, but at the minimum, I want to see coordinators, and they need to affect your team, and so, or your unit. And so for me, I understand that you can't really know all the coordinators and all these different things. And so for me, I would be okay with kind of fake people. And it's 32 NFL coaches, easy to get them and know who they are. Even though there's like Belichick that doesn't allow people to use his likeness, but still, it's not hard to get them. And even though it's only 64 coordinators, the thing is they can continue to come from different places. So I'm not going to ask them to know all the coaches in the league. I think what they could do to make it simple is just have a pool of like 100, fake coaches. Maybe model some after some, I don't know, but just fake coaches. And what I would do is, at the minimum, I would just give them grades. I think that's easy. So run pass for coordinators, pretty simple. A plus through F. And so that way you could kind of judge what type of coach you got for that side of the ball. And then each coach should have a position specialty, much like you should if you're the head coach or if you're playing the head coach. And so what happens is you boost that position more, developmental points or whatever, based off what your position specialty is. And so let's say as a head coach, my specialty is quarterbacks. My offensive coordinator, I want to make sure his specialty isn't also quarterbacks. I mean, if we both are, we double the development points, but maybe you want to complement it with a different position. But you still have the overall, skill in that offense, or run offense, pass offense. And so, like I said, that helps you build the staff. So maybe I'm good at pass offense, so my coordinator is good at run offense, whatever. And then you could do it that way. And then that specific unit gets boost, but also that specific side of the ball, like if you're better at run or pass, and then also that specific position. If you have like a coach who is a defensive back coach, whatever. So that to me is the minimum. And then what I would do is, like I said, from that pool with also the current NFL head coaches, when you do the contracts should just be like players. You should also be able to have a thing where you offer them as offensive coordinator or head coach. And so, so that's the minimum. on the maximum side, if you really want to put the time in, I would say that you would give them a grade at each position. And so all the stuff stays the same. They have a grade as far as run pass game for their side of the ball. So let's say defensive coordinator. Let's take this. Say I have a candidate. I need a defensive coordinator. I can look and this person has like his grades in run defense and pass defense. Let's say B+ in run defense, A- in pass defense. I can then also look at his position breakdown. His preferred or like his specialty position is defensive ends, but that's rated at like an A. But I can also see like his ability to coach defensive backs might be a B. His ability to coach defensive tackles might be a B+. His ability to, coach linebackers might be a C-, like whatever. And so then from there, I could determine if I want to go with coordinator. I also could offer him a position role. So let's say you got a younger guy who is really good. He's on the market. And he seems like he could be a good coordinator, but you already got a coordinator for another year. And you want to bring that guy in as a D-line coach. You could offer him a D-line coach, and then next year you could promote him to coordinator or something like that. And so that would be the high end, and I know that would take more time. But that's where I would want to see it get to. But at the minimum, I think you could just have coordinators, so you don't have to worry about position coaches, like the high end. But at the low end, just have coordinators. And so then, like I said, it's now a function of the coordinators you pay and the ones you are able to get, but also a function of your skills as a head coach as well. Similarly to that, listen, hear me out. I love this. I would revamp the whole scouting, and this is how I would do it. I would add a director of scouting, and similar to a coordinator, where you have a pool of like, let's say 75 fake, scouting personnel, and they are graded. I would say really you could just make them one solid grade. What are they at scouting? Because in real life it's college scouting and it's pro scouting. But in Madden, there's no real pro scouting because they got overalls. And so it's nothing that you need them to do as far as that. So for the sake of Madden, I would just say give them one grade as a scouting coordinator, A, B, whatever. And then you can offer the contract to get them, of course. And so the higher rank your director is, then the more accurate they will be on players. And also the more players they would be able to get you. So I think about this two ways. Either you make it just one director, or you just make it like a budget allocation, scouting. So scouting department. And so that is the higher money you give them from your cap that's going to be more players that you get scouted. And so like they'll be able to find the gems that are low ranked, but actually are pretty good. And they're going to be more accurate on like the players that they're scouting. So I like one of those two options. And so either way, the more money you put into scouting, the better your scouting department is. And so what I would do is right now there's in-season scouting and all that. I would take all that away. What I would do is in franchise mode, you don't scout at all. You don't do any of that. You could create the rookie class and play with it, but you don't do anything with the rookie class. Once the offseason hits, you get a list from the scouting department of their big board based on, what positions you need and then which players they think are also really good. So it's a mix of like who's the big talent that we might be able to draft. And also it's a mix of what positions do we need. And maybe you could add a function in where you could give a preference. Like I prefer talented players, or I prefer position need, or I prefer only players we might be able to draft, or, with our pick, whatever. And so anyway, you get a big board of a list of players, and these are the ones they're recommending. And then you go through the scouting combine, and then you get the whole draft pool. You get their numbers. So what effectively happens is my scouting department says, hey, Terry Jackson, he looks like he's going to be our best target. And so then I could just go to the combine results, look how Terry Jackson did, and I can, sign off and say, yeah, okay, this matches up with my scouting department. I like his numbers. Or maybe you say, okay, Terry Jackson at quarterback, it looks good. Or I want to say, because combine doesn't matter that much for quarterback. Let's say wide receiver. Terry Jackson, I like his combine. He's highly recommended by my scouting department. But I also can look at everybody else's combine, and I see a guy that's lower ranked or not on the recommendation list, but his numbers he blew the combine up. He's crazy. And so I think then as a decision maker, you get to make a decision. Do I go against my scouting department? Do I, because of what I'm seeing with the numbers and the weight, the height, all that? Or do I just go with what my scouting department sends me? And then I think you could also add a function where maybe after the combine, you tell them to scout a player more. And so then you can do scout points. And it's like you got a certain amount of scout points. Okay, these are the players I want y'all to look more into, and then reevaluate the list. Or you could even get real in depth and say, okay, I'm going to assign my position coach. If you have position coach. Or you could just say assign coaching staff to scout player. So now the coaching staff will tell you what they think about it. And then at the draft, you just have the big board of what your scouts suggest, the combine numbers, and maybe what your coaching staff approved or recommended. And so then from there you draft. Because right now, the idea, I'm sure players or people are yeah, I want to be able to know what they're going to be. Of course, if in real life, if they could just know, Mitch Trubisky has A- in throw power. If they could just know that, yeah, of course, but that's not how real life works. And so for me, I think if you want to get not as close, but if you want to get closer to reality, that's how I would go about it. So then the thing that I like about it is that, yeah, you got to add a contract logic to the scouting department, but I think that's easy to add, especially if you're taking away the whole scouting piece during the season. So that's part of the technology you no longer have to make. And then you just change it over to make it a function of money and okay, I'm paying this much money into my scouting department. And then you, of course, make it where it's not foolproof. Sometimes they'll miss or whatever. So it's still on you to make a decision. But that's how it is. You don't have A-, B-, and you can still have projected rounds. You can still have that. Because really, as a coach, that's all you get. You get what the scouts tell you. You get film, but you can't really do film on Madden. And you get what they're projected as, and you get the combine numbers. That's really all it is. And so I think that would be a more authentic experience. And so if you're talking about revamping franchise in those two major ways, that would make it so much more in-depth and more immersive. Again, even if it was just coordinators, I would like it to be coordinators in position, coaches, but even if it's just coordinators, what that allows you to do is create a staff to affect your team, and then also be able to go out and get other head coaches and do a coaching carousel. And so I like that too. The last thing I would say is contracts. Everybody talks about contracts. I agree. Contracts. And they've done an update, they said this year, where the money people ask for is a little more realistic. And so you're going to see more star players hit the market, even though that's not how it really happens in real life. They find a way to get them. But for me, they got to fix the contracts, add the team option, add a player option, which I think would be a cool thing to get ahead of. Because right now, I've talked about player control in the NFL, but they don't have those type of things. I think if you add it to the game, it'll be ahead of that issue, because I think that will come down the line. But add, like, front load, back load, all those different things. And you see it in 2K. So for me, it's just like, it can be done. And some people are like, that's a different company. Well, the way business works, it's not hard to find that stuff. Like, you could hire somebody that used to work there. You could have somebody that works there now consult on the side. Like, I don't know the industry if they have like non-compete agreements in their contracts where it's like you couldn't do that, but there's ways around it. You can get information from somebody that worked at 2K, because they've had this for years, and figure out what technology or how they work their contract system, because that's perfect. It's very customizable. And it doesn't have to be exact. Like, in real life, a contract could be anything. But on the game, at least, add more options, make it more realistic. And then that adds to the scenario. So maybe you get a Pat Mahomes. It's like you want to resign, and it's like a scenario pops up. Pat Mahomes says he wants a player option in his contract, or he's not signing. And so now you got a decision to make. And so I think the contracts could open up a lot more, especially if you add in the scouting component, because now you got a budget for your scouts, you got a budget for your staff, you got a budget for your players, and it just makes it more immersive. And you could simulate, like 2K kind of has that, where you could simulate if you're not in depth in franchise and you want the computer to handle all that, you could do that. But for us that want to do it, it should be available. So, yeah, I think those are the big changes. So let me know in the comment section, especially the scouting. Tell me if you would like that more, or you like, no, I just want to be able to look at the players overall. Because right now it's just too predictable. And that's not how life or NFL is. So go to the comment section. Let me know what you think about Madden franchise, what you would like to see. Thumbs up, subscribe, share around, get the conversation started. And thank you for listening.